Welcome to another edition of Green Dialogues. Today we have a guest with us, Mr. Indra Nath Bose. Mr. Indra Nath Bose is the advisor to the Great Eastern Shipping Company Limited, who has over 50 years of experience in maritime industry. He has served Indian Register of Shipping, IRS, for 22 years in various capacities, the last being Vice President. He has been with the Great Eastern Shipping Company Limited for past 14 years and served as the designated person and head of QST department and was responsible for quality, safety, occupational health, and environmental production standards of the company and training of floating staff. He was a member of the governing board and chairman of the Academic Council of Great Eastern Institute of Maritime Studies. He has been representing Government of India at Marine Environment Protection Committee and other forums of Indian Maritime Organization, IMO, for over 2 decades and has been closely associated with the development of various marine environment protection measures, specifically reduction of greenhouse gases emission at national and international levels as representative of Indian National Shipowners Association, INSA. He is a member of the BIMCO Marine Environment Committee. He is the current chairman of Technical Committee of INSA. Welcome to the show, Mr. Indra Nath Bose. It's a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rampasad. And thank you for inviting me to your this forum and your kind introduction.
Sir, let me begin by asking you, you have a lot of exposure representing at IMO on these emissions issues. Now, marine industries, the current worry is the impending regulations that are for the milestones of 2030 and 2050. So let us take the nearest milestone 2030. So what do you think is happening currently to meet the deadlines of 2030? And I'm asking this question with reference to the marine industry and Indian shipowners' perspective.
See, 2030 is a short-term goal where the IMO has got a GHG reduction strategy, which was framed in 2018. And that says that the energy intensity, that means the grams of CO2 emitted per ton mile of cargo carried or transport work, the CO2 emission must reduce by 40% by 2030 compared to 2008 base level. So we are talking about this particular goal. So there are a couple of regulatory measures. One is energy efficiency index for existing ships, which is worldwide. I mean, it's about 60, 70, 68% of bulk carriers will not meet that standard without doing certain technical modifications, like fitting energy-saving devices or reducing the engine power. So similar is the situation among the Indian fleet. I mean, the Indian Register of Shipping, they deal with the Indian fleet very much. So their estimation is that, most of the Indian vessels, which is average age is around 17%, will require a power reduction of 25 to 45% of the main engine power. So that is one. And second is, it's an operational carbon index. That means what we talked about, EEXI is a design index. We do it one time. That has to be done in 2023, and it remains unchanged. The other one is operational. Per ton mile of cargo carried or unit transport work, how much CO2 have you emitted? And your emission should be below a benchmark. It's like telling a car owner that, okay, you have brought Bharat 4 and this is your standard, but every year you have to reduce your CO2 emission per ton mile. So accordingly, the ships has to be operated to make sure your emission doesn't exceed that benchmark. So it's a very, very harder task than the EEXI, which is the simplest task than the CII, which is operational one. And is going to have a lot of implication commercially, operation of the ships, because ships are chartered out. With a charter party, you will have different kind of agreement to say that ships can maintain a particular rating, which is permitted by law. And otherwise, you get, inferior rating, and there are certain measures you have to take, corrective measures. So these, as you said, for the Indian ship owners, being an older profile of ships, there will be more problem here. And ship owners have to take all kinds of actions to reduce their energy consumption. Do everything possible to reduce your energy usage. From very things like fitting energy saving devices, or even simple things like changing the electric lights to LED lights, then using better hull anti-fouling coatings, taking care of the hull, propellers, etc. So operational measures, weather routine. So all these has to be done to make sure that with CII rating, you remain in compliance with the regulatory requirements.
So now we have seen this, we are talking about the existing older ships. Now these big shipping lines have started off using LNG as fuel. We have seen exclusive LNG fuel ships, and then another major shipping line started using methanol as its fuel. So what is the story with LNG and methanol, and where do we progress from after these two fuels?
Okay, thank you for that question. It's highly talked about, and I must tell you something. I need to describe a little bit about the fuel. The fuel today, it's all fossil fuel. We pull it out from underground and you use it. This is combination of hydrogen and carbon. And fuel will continue to be hydrogen and carbon, but the feedstock used for producing that fuel and production pathway will be different from what it is fossil fuel today. For example, to have a green fuel, like green methanol or green ammonia or green hydrogen, you need to have green energy. That means it must come from renewable sources like wind power or solar power or hydro, etc. It must come from there. Feedstock you use must be renewable. For example, split the water, which consists of hydrogen and oxygen, split it to get the hydrogen and use that hydrogen. Use carbon from biogenic sources, from biological sources, or capture the carbon from air, direct air, or from funnel of some existing plants, and then use that carbon in manufacturing fuel. Same hydrocarbon, the same methanol, ammonia, but they will be green. So the issue is, right now, methanol is already being used on engines for the last 5-6 years. About 8 product tankers are using it. And because methanol is one of the most transported chemical in the world. And they take from the cargo and use it. But that methanol is produced from LNG. And methanol can be also produced from coal. So they don't give you environmental benefit. The benefit will come if you use the green methanol. Now, the line you talked about, the container ship owning line, they are trying to develop green methanol. Have green sources of energy, and just not in one place, in 7 different parts of the world. It's exploratory, it's trying. So first mover, things like that. But so methanol is a viable fuel. It's easy to handle compared to ammonia or hydrogen. There are a lot of safety concerns with those fuels. That way, methanol is easier to handle. So it has got a future, and we can see methanol being in use in 2050 in good measure. But that will be all green methanol. Now, other thing you talked about LNG. The LNG, there is a lot of debate about environmental benefit of LNG. again, just to go back to the basics, today we are measuring carbon footprint of a marine fuel based on how many grams of CO2 has been emitted for burning 1 gram of fossil fuel on the ship. We are not bothered about how much grams of CO2 has gone out in production, transportation, refining, etc. No, we are not. It's only doing this. Now, some of these fuels in production pathway, it'll have lot of emissions, or even if you make the methanol from coal, there's no environmental benefit there. So to capture this, IMO is developing a life cycle assessment guideline. And each of the fuel, based on feedstock use and production pathway, it will have a carbon emission factor for the production to ship's tank. Another factor, ship's tank to propeller. So combined, you will know how much CO2 is going out. And just not CO2. Today it is CO2, even methane will be captured, NOx will be captured. So all sustainability issues will be captured in this. And this guideline will tell us which fuel is more environmental beneficial than the other. And they will be listed out. And this is under development now. The work has started 2-3 months ago. There are already some data, but not much data. Not much data about the green production path is available. So it will be 2023 end or early 2024 by when it will be available. Then we will be able to judge LNG, whether it is giving or not. So you may say that those who have invested in LNG, I mean, is it a problematic investment? I mean, this is a questionable because there are certain industry sector who believe LNG is not the answer. It's a fossil fuel after all, and you're locking your investment in fossil fuel for next 20, 30 years. That's not good for the earth. And another one is saying at least LNG is giving some benefit. What is happening in exploration, production, that's a global issue, just not for shipping. So we are promoting LNG everywhere. So these are the two interest groups. And only after the LCA guideline comes in, we will know how much beneficial or not.
So does that mean that maybe the first quarter of 2024, we have a clear picture on which fuel will be?
Yes. What is being developed is a sort of an interim guideline. And it is being said that this will be updated as more information comes in, more data comes in. Meanwhile, a lot of research will be going on in actually measuring. And we will only put in those fuel for which documented and what should I say, confirmed values can be put. Only those values of fuel will be captured there. So we will have the first draft, if not draft, it's actually to be used because we are very conscious that don't give something which will become invalid few years down the road. So it should be as concrete as possible because the ship owner is investing for next 25 to 30 years in a ship lifetime. So we will have it by 2024 at the latest, going by present development.
In the meanwhile, can you tell me what is the impact of this CII and EEXI on coastal ships?
Okay, coastal ships actually is coming back to your first question that ships are older. The EEXI applies to some of the, not that all, like tugs and all, it doesn't apply. Dredgers and all, it doesn't apply. It only applies to bulk carriers, tankers, I mean, which I can think of right now, the gas carriers, container ships, like main ship types for which it is possible to, for which there is a reference line or a standard is already there in the Marpol Convention of those ship types. So those ships, the EEXI will have a significant impact. I mean, the power will be limited unless the ship owner goes for retrofitting energy-saving devices. But that commercially may not be viable because of the remaining life of the vessel. If the remaining life very short, doesn't make sense investing money in that. So choice will depend on the ship owner on case-to-case basis. For a ship, it may be viable, another ship not viable. So most ships will be reducing their engine power, and that way the ships will travel at a slower speed. So there will be a shortage of tonnage. I mean, if it's, I'm just so you may need more number of ships to complement that. So that is with respect to EXI. And CII, as I explained to you, it's an operational carbon intensity of the ship. I mean, every year you have to calculate how much the ship has emitted and whether it has met the benchmark or not. If it is inferior, then it has to take corrective action to bring it back. Just to add to that, this is valid until 2025 calendar year. And the entire, we do not have the reduction target as of now is 2% reduction every year from 2023 to 2025 calendar year. Beyond which 26 to 2030 is not decided. It will be decided in 2025 based on how the world shipping has performed in 2023, 2024, these two calendar years. These will be taken to decide on further reduction measure. As I said before, the target was 40% reduction by 2030 compared to 2008. There were many in IMO, they are saying that 40% is not good enough. It has to be more. So whether it is more or less, or if this is good enough, less it will not be, whether it's good enough, will be decided in 2025. So the CII target may get more intense. And as we saw, the 4th of April, the third working group report of IPCC has been published. And they are saying that by 2025, CO2 emission must peak, greenhouse gas emission, and then rapid reduction required. So we expect a more stringent CII requirement. Could be.
So considering the challenges that are before the ship owners with all these guidelines and the confusion and the kind of options of fuels that are available, how do you see the ecosystem or landscape of India from the perspective of what government is doing, what industry is doing, or what other stakeholders are doing? Are we on all these interested groups are on the same page, or what needs to be done? Like the progression or the transition happens smoothly.
Yes, it's a very, very important issue you have raised, that ship owners can't do this alone. I mean, today, because fuel will come from land, and ship owners don't deal with it. Marine industry don't deal with it. They say it will come from land. The energy producer will be somebody else. So, worldwide, this realization is coming that we can't do it alone, and you have to have a coordination of all stakeholders. Energy producer, fuel producer, transporter of that fuel. And not only that, other consumers, shore-based energy sector or cement or steel mill, they will all require hydrogen for this. Ships will also, I'm just saying hydrogen, it could be methanol, it could be anything else. So we need to get together, work together in having our establishment here. And it is a good thing that India is taking the initiative to become a green hydrogen hub. That's one of the few that is being talked about. So it's a futuristic outlook. And we need to have such, now here in producing green hydrogen, we need to have all stakeholders together, work together to ensure that fuels become available at a commercially viable cost. Because today the VLSFO fuel, which we use, is about $670 or something, even with the crude price that it is now. And the green methanol, which is going to be manufactured, which we talked about earlier, is going to be $2,000 to give the same energy value. I mean, for 2 tons of green methanol, energy density is half of fossil fuel, VLSFO. So you will need $2,000 worth of methanol to replace $670 of fuel. So that cost has to come down to make it competitive. It may not happen. We need other instruments, but all these things has to be worked together, and every stakeholder, and also research and development is another issue. I mean, today in a paper I read that Vedanta Group is getting together with IIT Bombay to develop hydrogen for their ore processing plant in Goa. So lots and lots of research projects required worldwide. 250 research projects are going on. And we need to have such things going on in India. Maybe in some corner it is going on. We don't know in shipping industry. So that's why it's necessary that our ministry, I mean, alternative sources of energy, which looks after that, we can all work together in getting the green fuel.
Mr. Indra Nath Bose, this is a huge subject that I don't think one conversation would give us the entire length and breadth of the issue. So maybe we look forward to have one more conversation. But however, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your insights on the regulations that are impending and on the choice of fuels that are available. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prasad. It was a pleasure talking to you and exchanging our views. And thank you. Thank you very much.